everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be telling you about my reading goals and statistics from 2019 and setting myself some new goals for 2020. So I'm going to be telling you about the page numbers of books I read, what kind of books I read, whether I succeeded or failed. I failed at the goals I set myself at the start of the year. So let's get the big one out of the way. In 2019, I read 150 books, which is such a surprise for me. And this totaled up to, I think, just under 38,000 pages. It's a little bit less than I'd read the year previously, but it is so much more than I expected to read. You know, 2019 was such a busy year for me. I completed my master's and I started a new job and then another new job. I'm really surprised by how much I read and I'm really happy about it. But at the start of the year, I set myself an ambitious target of getting my TBR below 85 books, with the realistic target of it being below 100 books. I started the year with a TBR of 170 books, and I now have a TBR of 149 books. Now, how does that work when I read 150 books this year? Apparently, I just can't stop buying books. And it's not just buying books, you know, it's being gifted books, it's being sent books by publishers, it's now working at a publisher. So yeah, massive failure there by 50 books. So like that's a third of my reading year. So like in theory, I would be able to get my TBR below 100 books now if I just didn't buy books for 4 months. So I think I can do this in 2020. I think I can get my TBR below 100 books. I also did a massive unhaul of a lot of books. So now my TBR is like books that I want to read. There's no books that feel like burdens that are on my TBR anymore. So we're gonna try again. By the end of 2020, I would like a TBR that's under 100 books. I should be able to do this, and I failed once, and I feel like that failure will fuel me to succeed this year. Right, now let's get into the stats. So of the 150 books I read, the breakdown of page numbers is like this. So I read 28 books that were under 100 pages, 21 books that were between 100 and 199 pages, 40 books that were between 200 and 299 pages, 43 books that were between 300 and 399 pages, and 15 books that were between 400 and 499 pages, and 3 books over 500 pages. That is really just in line with the percentages and the ratios that my reading has always been. As someone that reads a lot of poetry, I do have a lot of books that are in that shorter page count. The shortest book I read was Fox 8 by George Saunders, which I think is like only about 20 pages. The longest book I read was Daniel Deronda by George Eliot, which took me like 3 months to read and is 980-ish pages. 20 books digitally and 130 books physically, which I'm really happy about, and all of those digital books are audiobooks that I've borrowed. I've kind of just basically given up on my ebook TBR, hence this next bit of stats. In 2019, I didn't read any ebooks that I had bought, despite the fact I have a lot. But I'm just prioritizing my physical TBR. I did read one e-arc, and that was only because I accidentally left the house without a book. 23 of the books I read were borrowed, and 19 of those will be audiobooks. 80 of the books that I read were books that I had bought physically or were gifted to me, and then 46 of the books were books that I got from publishers, but I am including books that I got from work there. So when I record these stats in 2020, I would actually like to break this down further and record books that I got from publishers, but also how many I'm getting from work. And I would also like to now record how many books I'm getting from book swaps, which is something that I've really got into in the past few months. 115 of the books I read were by female authors, 28 by male authors, 6 had a mixed gender contribution, and I read 1 book by a non-binary author. I've always read more books by women than I have by men. It's just always been that way. In terms of the diversity of the authors I'm reading, I'm still sucking at this, because 34 of the books I read were by BAME authors, and 112 of the books I read were by white authors. 4 of the books I read had mixed contributors from like different backgrounds. So I've done a lot of thinking about this. A higher percentage of BAME authors than I'd read in any year previously, which just shows how bad I was at this in years previous. That figure of 34 is massively bolstered by the fact that all but 2 of the audiobooks I listened to in 2019 were by BAME authors. So that's something I would like to continue to do in 2020, to make sure all of the books that I am borrowing and listening to are by BAME authors. I think that's a really productive way of me getting more BAME voices into my reading. But I just took a look at my shelves, and as for physical books that I own by BAME authors, I only have 17 left. I just said that my TBR is 149 books. Like, that percentage is abysmal. So even if I'm listening to, say, like 20 audiobooks in a year, plus the 17 books on my shelves, that only takes me up to 37 books, which is only a tiny bit more than what I've done this year. How do I balance the fact that I want to take down my physical TBR, but I clearly need to be buying more books by BAME authors? I suppose it's just a matter of every time I go book shopping, I need to be making a conscious effort to be picking up voices that aren't like my own. One thing that is also going to affect this is the Irish Readathon, and I do need to buy quite a lot of books for that, or I would like to buy a few more books for that, and they're basically all going to be by white authors. I have found one Irish book by a not white person. So if anyone has any recommendations of people of colour who are Irish, who write, please point me in their direction. I have searched and I've really tried, and I've found one book. This is something that I really do need to do better with, and I'm going to try. I did mention the Irish Readathon very briefly just there. It happened again in 2019. It was its second year, and 2020 will be our third year. If you don't know, the Irish Readathon is something that myself and my co-hosts run every March, which is just about encouraging people to read more Irish literature than they normally would. And I normally read exclusively Irish literature in that month, but I'll be talking more about that in like February leading on to March. Now back to the stats. The types of book I read 77 novels, 31 books of non-fiction, 25 poetry books, 3 books that were either graphic novels or picture books, and 14 short story collections. I did say at the start of the year that I wanted to read more plays, because I'd read 2 the year previously, but this year I've read none, but I don't actually feel that bad about that. I've seen a few plays, which I actually think is a bit better than reading plays. Not really bothered by that. I do always try to read one non-fiction book, one poetry book, one short story collection every month. And that's like happened. I've read more than 12 of all of those kinds of books. And I've been doing TBRs where I've been speaking about the books from those specific types of books that I would like to prioritize in that month, and I don't feel the need to do that anymore. I'll talk about TBRs more in a second, but the final stat I have is the publication dates of books that I've read. So I read one book that isn't out yet. It's a 2020 release. I read 38 books that came out in 2019. I read 33 books that came out in 2018, 20 books from 2017, 31 that were published between 2000 and 2016, 14 books that were published between 1945 and 1999, 4 books between 1900 and 1944, 6 books from the 19th century, 1 book from the 18th century, and 2 books that were published earlier than that. In fact, those 2 were both like ancient Greek. I'm completely happy with this. It's meaning I was reading at least 1 classic a month, which I'm really happy about. I think I'm balancing reading new releases with reading backlist books really well. I'm very happy with this. So there are all my stats. Some goals kind of stuff, or like plans. With my TBRs, I don't want to do monthly TBRs anymore. Did it for a year. It was fine. Don't really want to do it anymore. I do want to do like some kind of interesting TBRs, and I do have a few ideas of kind of like novelty TBRs that I can do kind of sporadically. But in 2020, we're just gonna chill. I'm not gonna pick loads of books at the start of the month and be like, right, these are the ones that you have to get through. No. Oh, another thing, I did want to read all of the books that had been on my TBR for the longest time, so I did a video where I spoke about the 12 books that I'd had for longer than any other ones. What happened there was I planned on reading 1 a month, and what actually happened was I read 4, I unhauled 4, and I've kept 4, And if I haven't read them by the end of the year, they have to go. In fact, I think if I haven't read them by halfway through the year, they should probably go. But I am giving them another chance because I feel like I was the problem, not the books. Other goals I had in 2019 was I wanted to reach 2k subs on this channel. I did that. 2020 reach 3k. Probably won't happen, but we live in hope. And I wanted to finish my master's and get my first job in publishing. Fucking smashed it. I actually got my first job in publishing before I finished my master's, which was crazy. So I kind of like gave up on my master's a little bit because I was like, fuck it, I've got a job. Somehow still smashed my final project for my master's. Don't know how. I genuinely, I don't know. Got my grade back and it was great. And I was like, fucking hell, imagine if I'd actually tried. That job I got was a 6-month fixed term contract, and then I was offered a different job 3 months into that at the same company, and now I get to stay there. They can't get rid of me now. It's great. Been a bit of a mad year, lads, I'm not gonna lie to you. Which is why I'm so surprised that I read 150 books. Maybe like amongst the chaos, the books were like, you will always have us. So, to summarise, my goals for 2020, get my TBR below 100 books, read more BAME authors and figure out how to do that effectively while doing that first goal. Read those 4 books that have been on my TBR for the longest time, host the Irish Readathon again, and that's it really. That's it. They're all my goals. I think I can do it. I think I can get my TBR below 100 books. Oh my god, I really hope I do this. Let me know down below in the comments what your reading goals and resolutions are for 2020. I would love to hear what you've got planned, and maybe I'll get inspired to add a couple of resolutions to my plans for 2020. I'd love to have a chat with you guys down in the comments. I hope you're doing well, and I will talk to you in my next video.